In this video I'm going to show you how to plaster a wall from start to finish, showing how to PVA the wall, how to mix the plaster and how to apply the plaster. Right, to mix my PVA I've done a 2-to-1 mix, so that's 2 water to 1 PVA. Now these days they seem to be thinning the PVA down a bit in my view, so you can do 1-to-1 if you want, if you've got an old tatty wall. But I think this is going to be alright. I like to mix it in a milk bottle. If you look, there are markings on the side of the bottle which show you in pints, so you know how to mark it out. You can do 1 to 2, and then here you can give it a good shake every time you use it, and just put in the bucket what you need. All we do, pour our mixed up PVA and water into my designated bucket, like so, and we just use a standard paint roller. That's it, and we'll use this to apply it to the wall. This really is as simple as just getting PVA on your roller, shake it off so it's not dripping everywhere, because you don't want it all over the floor and over your face. And then you just take it to the wall and you just roll it on, just like that. If you want to get into any crooks and crannies, you just need to use a paintbrush. Right, I'm going to show you how to mix the plaster. I'm using just a standard power drill with a paddle mixer. You need to fill your bucket up with water, and then you need to add the plaster to the water and mix until you get a nice creamy texture. This is a multi-finish plaster. Then you want to use your bucket trowel to scrape all the plaster off the inside of your bucket. Like that kind of texture. So if you hold your trowel, it sticks. To give the paddle mixture a clean, I put it in a bucket of water. There we go. Ideally you want a bucket of water and a nice brush. This is for wetting down your tools. Before you start, make sure your hawk is wetted down and given a clean. Then you want to wet your trowel as well. You want a bucket trowel, you want to scoop your plaster up, put it on your hawk like that. I'll just show you with a little bit of plaster. If you're applying a plaster on a wall and you're doing it this way, for example, pick it up and you can apply your plaster just like that. If you're going to the top edge and pulling down, then you want to apply your plaster to your trowel that way round. Okay, so it's on the far right edge if you like, and that way when you come to apply like that, you can go to the wall and you can go down that way. So what we're going to do now is what's called flattening out. We've got a few lines here, you might not be able to see it on the camera there. But it's not perfect, plaster's still a bit wet. We're going to go over it with a nice clean trowel and just flatten it in a little bit before we put on our next coat. So just take your trowel, just do some nice sweeping lines like that. And just try to take out any obvious lines you've got in here. And you've got to be careful, I just picked up a bit of grit there. So I'm going to give that a clean now. Last thing you want is to be putting grit all over your nice plastered finished wall. So what you want is to have it as flat as you can without it being flat or it'll stick, and just be pushing that plaster in. When we do the final polishing, that's when we tilt it at more of an angle. So if you can see that sideways on there, you want it just off like that, so you're pushing it nicely in. Then if you tilt it too much, you're just going to pull plaster off the wall. And it'll annoy you because you'll take it all off on your trowel and you'll have to put it all back on again. You'll find the plaster will be going dry and it'll be panic stations. Very important thing when plastering or doing any wet trade, keep everything clean. There's no excuse for being dirty. Keep your trowels clean, keep your hawk clean, try and keep the floor clean. If you start walking through it, oh, right mess. So I'm going to go and mix another coat of plaster now and we'll put that on the wall. bit's called polishing off, and this is where you smooth the finished surface, and this is the enjoyable bit. Now with this, you put a bit of water on your trowel, but what I recommend doing first is just touch the wall and see, and you want what is like a slightly sticky tacky feel. That's the best time to do it. And it's what I always do, put the trowel on the wall first without any water on it, just to get a feel, because sometimes if it's a bit wet, you don't want to be adding water. You might be able to smooth it in a bit more and then leave it for a few minutes, but the best thing is not to play with it if it's still a bit wet. So you just want to get on there, and you'll just see some of the fine lines coming out. And what you're doing is you're applying a lot of pressure there, trowel at a slight angle, so you're pushing it in. And what you get on here, they call this the fat. You'll get a little bit of plaster on your trowel. And what you do is you keep pushing over, and bit by bit you're forcing all that plaster back in, filling any small dips, any bumps, lumps. So in the end you should have a nice smooth wall, and then you can go over it again a few times, wetting your trowel, and that'll give it that nice shiny finish. The other important thing is when plastering, like any other jobs you need to concentrate on, is to poke the tongue out. Like that. With a good poke, always helps the plaster go into the wall. I also noticed that I tend to do a little bit of a gurn when I'm concentrating, so the chin comes out. Nothing wrong with that. Adds to the quality of the finish. And you can put a little bit of water on the plaster like that. Just give it a good scrape. And it's a little angle, you don't want it too steep. And then you get that, what you call fat on your trowel. And that you need to keep pushing along like that. So a little wet, you don't take it off your trowel this time, that needs to be spread back and forth. You're trying to work that into all these little holes or dips you might still have if your board's uneven or your wall is uneven. Right, there we are, we're done, we're polished. Difficult to see there with the light on, but you can see that's a nice shiny surface now. That's just going off. You can always go over that the next day if you want with a dry trowel or a wet one. Just put a real gloss shine on it, but like I said earlier, I wouldn't bother because you find it hard for the paint to get a purchase in.